Welcome to Own the Season podcast. We will talk to industry insiders along with outdoor enthusiasts to help you own your season. Now let's join hosts Art and Michelle Helen with Brad Jones. Own the Season podcast is sponsored by Griffin Armament, the oldest privately owned silencer manufacturer in the United States. Go to griffinarmament.com to learn how you can get a silencer shipped to your door. Griffin Armament, engineered silence.
Hello and welcome to Own the Season podcast. I'm Michelle Helen along with Art Helen and Brad Jones. And I almost mixed them up again where Art's laughing. I have been known to mix up the names on my guys here, and I guess we're just one big happy family. And I do always tease Art that he and Brad are like work husbands, you know, because they're always on the phone talking about work and spend a lot of time together working on the editing and different aspects of the business. And I almost did it again today. So today it's just three of us, and we are going to talk about outfitter hunts. You know, we have, we're fortunate that we have some land here that the family purchased like 30 years ago when land was not crazy expensive. And we've got some land across the road that we hunt as a lease and trade for maintaining that land and plowing driveways and mowing fire breaks, etc. And we've gone on public land hunts outside of the state in particular. But sometimes, you know, it makes really good sense to hire an outfitter. Sometimes it's required, I think, in some states. Alaska comes to mind. You know, there are situations where you have to go with an outfitter. But sometimes it just makes good sense to do that, probably especially out of state, maybe when you don't have the time to scout as much as you would need to really end up with a successful outcome. Sometimes outfitted hunts go well and sometimes they don't, right?
Yeah, I mean... They do. We've been on some incredible outfitted hunts, and sometimes you need to. It's, I've been on some great outfitted bear hunts in, like the Northwest Territories and Saskatchewan, Alberta, different provinces in Canada. I've been, here in Wisconsin, and...
Well, and I think, like, to back up, like, I think one thing that makes that more necessary or definitely helpful to go with an outfitter for bear is unless you're doing a spot and stalk situation, or here in Wisconsin using dogs, and you have your own dogs. I mean, you need to have somebody who can be running the baits for you, right, weeks in advance, and that's hard to do if it's not in your backyard.
Right. I mean, right. If you own property in northern Wisconsin where there's a lot of bears, then no, you don't have to, because you can, run your baits, you can do your thing. But here, where we bear hunt is over 4 hours north of us.
Oh my gosh, it's like 6 hours.
Yeah. And so I cannot run up there to do that. So it's worth the money to me, to do that. And, spend that extra money, because what it would cost me to buy the bait, run the bait up there, stay there, everything else, I'm farther ahead, and the knowledge of that outfitter. So there are times, yes, it's great, and there are some incredible outfitters out there, but there are a lot of questions that have to be asked, because there's a lot of outfitters out there. I don't want to call them liars or cheaters or anything like that.
Are they like used car salesmen?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that the thing? They're trying to sell something, right? They're trying to sell a spot on their camp, a hunt. And some of them kind of will go to great lengths to sell that hunt.
They will. And, before I get into some of the good hunts that we had and some of the ugly ones and tell a few stories here, the most recent one in memory just because it just now happened. And Brad went on his first elk hunt out west. And I'm sure Brad has a lot to share here on a not so great experience. But give us the bad, the good, and the ugly with this whole thing, for people to understand it.
We are hunting wild animals, so they're unpredictable. Um, they do what they want to do. Weather also plays a big role. So you always can't blame the outfitter if you don't get an animal, as long as they're trying really hard. With my experience on my elk hunt last week, outfitter emailed me day before the hunt and said that it's warm and gave me that spiel, and I understood that the elk weren't coming out of the mountains yet because of 60-degree weather. Area I'm hunting, and they called it a migration hunt, so it was the lower part, kind of the wintering grounds. We were hunting an alfalfa field and a wheat stubble that they were going to feed in most of the winter. But one of the first things that kind of showed that there was a problem was the guide called me and said that he was double booked through this outfitter. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you mean you're double booked? And he said, well, it's supposed to be 2 hunters per guide. We have you, your cameraman, and 2 other hunters. And I asked him, I said, well, are we going to hunt together? And he goes, no, I'm going to drop them off somewhere, and then I'll hunt with you in the morning, and then I'll hunt with them in the afternoon. I said, fine. So we get out, and that's what we did. We didn't see any elk the first day. But second day, when we got out there, he was late picking me up. And I said, what's going on? And he goes, well, the guys were still sleeping, so I had to go pound on their door. That was the second thing that clued me in. And just things happened all week long that I knew there were problems. The guide told me how he wanted me to shoot the elk. He preferred me to shoot it in the neck so we could drop it right where it stood, because the property was so narrow that he didn't want the animal to run into the neighbor's property. Otherwise, we'd have to call the DNR again. So then I asked him, I said, well, how many acres are we hunting on? And he said, 500. I'm like, wow, that's awful small. How many people are hunting here? And he said, well, I've got you 3, and then there's another guide with 3 more people. And I'm thinking to myself, there's 6 of us on 500 to 600 acres. That just doesn't sound right, nor safe. And we found out that it wasn't safe because on one of the hunts that I was on, there was one of the guides was just over the hill from me. So right where I could have possibly been shooting, there was hunters.
That's scary.
Yeah, very scary.
Because you're trusting, that's the thing. Like, you don't know the land as well as they do. And, where there's, what's over the next hill or ridge, or that hump. And then if you've got just multiple people in there at relatively close, not that spread out,
right,
that becomes scary.
And hunting this way, so in Colorado, I'm sure this goes for other states where you elk hunt, there's a minimum where they have to have 4 points. So that was a call I was going to have to make on the, hunts that the guide wasn't with me. Didn't really like that. I thought the guide should be with you the whole time. Had me in an old, like a homestead house from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and I was set up in one of the windows. Well, after the first day, I realized the animals that we were seeing were seeing us. So when we went into town, I got some burlap to pin up on the window to close it down. So I just had a small area to shoot out, and thought, they should probably have taken care of this, that I shouldn't have to do it. And then the final straw was the outfitter emailed me and was asking me some questions on what I was doing, and made some assumptions that I brought extra hunters with me, which I did not. It was people that he had booked. So
the whole thing just turned out to be a bad experience. So,
Oh.
when you're booking these hunts of a lifetime, which is, a hunt of a lifetime for me, I had approximately $10,000 into this hunt with the guide fees, the license. Licenses are not cheap over the counter. I think it was $827. Hotel, gas, all that. So it was super, super expensive for me. I'm just a working person. I don't have a lot of extra cash, but I had saved up for this hunt and wanted it to be a hunt of a lifetime. When you're booking a hunt with an outfitter, do your due diligence. Ask lots of questions. I don't think you can ask too many questions. Some of the questions I would ask moving forward is the guide to hunter ratio. I wouldn't want any more than 2 hunters per guide. Ask them what you're hunting on, public or private land. And if it's private land, how many acres you're going to be hunting. And ask them if there's a backup plan to your hunt. I did ask that. I said, well, since the animals aren't out of the mountains, out of the dark timber, are there any chances we can move up there and go after them? And he goes, no, no, we don't have any acreage up there. This hunt's strictly a migration hunt. So, questions like that. Ask how many people are going to be on the property with you. Like I said, ask lots of questions. I don't think you can ask a dumb question when you're spending thousands of dollars, for a hunt of a lifetime.
Yeah,
Ask
and
as
that's,
many if you want.
I mean, yeah, and I think the more questions you ask, the better you are. And if that outfitter starts avoiding those questions, now all of a sudden you've already started your red flags. They shouldn't. It shouldn't matter what questions you ask. There's no dumb question when it comes to that because, like you said, you saved your money for this one hunt, and literally you got screwed. And you know, even asking those other questions, it all depends on the outfitter and what you have down and things like that. But you may lose your deposit if you pull out. But I would rather lose $1,000 or $1,500 deposit than 10 grand.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And another bad deal too, So the guide that we had was super nice young kid, seemed super knowledgeable. You could see he was frustrated, so he was hired by the outfitter. Um, a lot of these guides, they don't make a lot of money from the outfitter. They're basically working on the tip money. So, I still had to give them the $1,000 tip
Right.
I did, or otherwise the poor kid wouldn't have made any money. And he did his best to, do what he could do, but
He
it
was
was the
kind of
outfitter.
he was kind of stuck in the middle, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you don't shoot the messenger, and in this case, he's the messenger. He's got the message and what to do, and he's trying to do it. And unfortunately, he's at that same time he's been set up for failure also,
absolutely.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's not his fault
no.
or her
It,
fault.
and
Yeah.
in this case, too, Art, the outfitter was ghosting him. He was trying to call and text, and the outfitter was not replying to the guide. So that was another
And
big
hopefully the guide
red flag.
finds somebody else to guide for.
Yeah.
Maybe in this case.
Yeah, I told him that, this was only his second year with this person. And, I said, boy, you seem like a pretty knowledgeable kid on all these hunts. I said, I would find somebody else to guide through, somebody more reputable, because the other two guys that were with us, they were from Texas, and they were definitely going to stir the pot up with this outfitter because they did not like the situation that they were put in either with, being double booked. Wasn't good for anybody.
So
So now, I need to go back after the outfitter, because my contract does say 2 hunters per guide, and we had 3 hunters. So maybe that's something I can go back after. There was some talk between later on. I ended up pulling out because the last day we were there, the straw that broke the camel's back is on our way walking in. They were spraying herbicide on the fields that we were hunting. And I knew right then and there that these animals weren't coming back in.
Good grief.
Yeah. So, and they didn't. We hunted that whole day, didn't see anything. So I just told the guide before we left that night. I said, this is enough. Enough is enough. I don't want to frustrate myself anymore. And I think it's just best that we leave camp and sever our ties with.
Been there, done that.
I'm sorry you had a bad one.
We've pulled hunts early, and just sit there and shake your head and say this is stupid. No matter how many, but you bring up a good point with the contract. Make sure that you have a good, legitimate contract and that it's signed, in case something like this happens. So if Brad, if you do something with this outfitter or go after this outfitter or somebody. You've got a leg to stand on, and hopefully, you guys can get something worked out there. Because
there was talk. When I told him I was leaving, the guide called me back and said, "Hey, the outfitter's talking about giving you another hunt for next year, maybe possibly the next year." But from what I gathered from the guide, that this was an ongoing issue with this guy. So me personally, I don't even want to take another hunt from this guy because I can see the same thing happening again.
Right.
Because it sounds like he's doing this to everybody, that he's just overwhelmed. So yeah, I don't want to put myself through all that expense again.
Right.
Like the license, the travel, the hotel. Because you get out there and hotels aren't cheap.
No.
I think we had $900 into a hotel.
I was going to say, even especially during hunting season, because they know that everything is booked around there, so they jack the rates way up too. So, but so listeners understand too. Not every outfitter is like this. There
definitely not. We're talking about the minority.
Yeah, we're definitely the minority, but we're also trying to educate you on what to look for, what to ask, things like that.
I think asking references.
Yeah.
Like, do you have some past hunters that I could call, and talk to? Right. I think would be another thing, because the contract is good. Then you have something in writing. But like asking and having these good questions is good. Whether they answer or evade is a clue. But like they could make stuff up and lie. Like they could flat out lie to you.
Right.
So I think getting some references was probably a good idea.
And
can you think? I'm trying to think of like any. Maybe I think you've had some experiences, some hunts that I was not on. That were bad, but I think I've had pretty good experiences with
you have
outfitters when you and I have gone together.
I guess there's a couple. You still on a bear hunt. You still shot a bear, but when
bear hunter that was afraid, the bear guide that was afraid of bears.
That's exactly where I was going. We got there, and funny, he was a newer bear guide, and he really wanted to try this and get into bear guiding.
Well, he was was he the guide / outfitter?
And he was the outfitter, and he was just trying to get into this. And we were in Saskatchewan, and never forget the first night. He's like, "Now, I'll show up with the ATV. I'll drive you both in with the ATV." And literally, he would drive you to the base of the stand.
And that's because we're one of us is filming the other,
right?
So that's why he was driving us both in. We were sitting together.
Yeah, and so he would drive us in, literally to the base of the stand, and have you almost climb off the ATV right onto the ladder and into
hot
the
lava,
tree.
like the ground is lava.
Yeah, and then he would sit there, and then he'd leave. Well, when he came back that night,
he wanted you in the stand when he came back.
He put us in the tree stands were 8 feet off the freaking ground. You know, I could like literally stand there and reach up and grab the base of the tree stand, you know, for the hunter. And so he must not have liked heights either. And so we're sitting, and this one was called the dump stand or whatever. It was like partially between the dump and you know, the woods where they're coming out, and he had this bait there, and so, and it literally was 200 yards from camp, maybe, right? And the first night we get done, and he drives in, and he picks Michelle up, and he's like, okay, he says, now you stay in the tree, and I'll be back in 10 minutes.
It's going to take me back to the truck.
Yeah, it's going to take her back to camp because, like, camp is so close, right? And I'm like, I've bear hunted a gazillion times, you know, whatever. I'm like, I get down out of the tree and I start walking back towards camp. This dude comes like unhinged. He's like, these bears are going to run you down and kill you, and they're going to eat you. And I'm like, what the hell movie have you been watching? You know, I'm like, these bears are not going to run me down. They're not going to kill me. They're not going to, but yeah, he was deathly afraid of bears. And, I think where we were at, I think I would have been more afraid of the wolves than I would have been with the bears, because the night that Michelle shot her bear, there was also another gentleman in camp. And we went by boat that night. That was actually a really cool hunt. And we take this boat way back across the lake. He drops his hunter off. Then he takes us over.
So the other guy's on the other side of the lake,
Yep.
and he's hunting with a shotgun.
Yep. And we hear a shot. And I'm like, awesome.
Pretty early in the evening.
And then they've got like a walkie-talkie so they can get back to the guide, you know, in case you have problems or something, because your cell phones obviously weren't working. So they're like little sat radios, whatever. And all of a sudden we hear a bunch of chatter on that because I've got it turned on in case something, you know, is going to happen. And I hear all this stuff that he's like, there's wolves all over up here. They're eating my bear. What do I do? This, and we're like, what the heck is he talking about? Well, this was this guy's first bear ever. Beautiful white, you know, patches on its chest, and it was so cool looking bear. And these wolves came in and ate it right in front of him.
Or they ripped it up. I mean,
yeah, I mean, they ripped it and they ate a bunch of it. There was like, couldn't even get a rug out of it. And all he could do is sit there and watch us. And I'm like, yeah, I think I would have been more afraid of that than the bears. And,
Right.
but you know, that was one. He did an okay job as an outfitter guide, but you know,
he was very anxious.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
like nervous, anxious.
he needed to do it a little bit longer. I mean, he was a newer outfitter, newer guide. So, you know, they would have been good questions to know, because then I wouldn't have gone in there and been like, is with the experience that I had as a bear hunter, I would have been like, okay, bud, you know, and sit down and try to, you know, help this guy relax a little bit and be a little calmer with the bears instead of trying to, you know, if we went to know what we're doing, I would have been scared to death.
Yeah, that's true. You could new hunters would feed off of that.
Yeah, I mean,
versus like I even think of while not a hunt, Art and I did a fly-in grizzly bear like photography thing in Alaska, where we along with another couple, you know, everybody had like the pilot, and then the pilot had like 4 people in their planes, and the pilot then was your guide. And we got a great guy. Like, I picked him out of the lineup, and I'm like, oh, I hope we get him. And then we did. And so the whole time, like, this was what Art wanted to do, was do this fly-in grizzly bear photo thing. And I'm thinking, I am going to be, like, peeing my pants the whole time. Like, I don't know how I can do this. I'm going to be, like, just out of my mind afraid this whole time. We're out there with these grizzly bears in the wild, right? But he was so calm and they do such a good job of explaining things to you. And, I felt totally safe because he was confident and calm. And I never once felt like that afraid, like I really, thought I would. And we even had, we had a sow and a cub that were less than 20 yards
they were
from us.
5 to 8 yards. When they went by.
Like you go to, I don't know what we went to 50 yards. I think like the group walks up to like 50 yards and then stops and kneels down. And then from there, you let the bears do whatever they want to do. And they were feeding towards us and just kept coming closer and closer and closer until she just walked past us and, and left. Now, one of the other people in our group got a little panicky and stopped taking pictures because she was like getting ready to flee.
Bad deal.
Which would have been bad, but she was, got quite nervous. And I don't blame her. But there was an example of a guide who knew what he was doing and was confident and made those of us in his group feel safe.
Right. You got to stand. You stand your ground with them. And I never once, from the time we looked at this trip and booked this, I was never once nervous. I never once had a second thought, anything, because
that's because he was going to put peanut butter in my backpack.
Because I knew Michelle was going with me, and I know I'm fat and old, but I knew I could still outrun her, and that's all that mattered. And so I'm like, I don't care at all. I know that I can outrun her, so we're good.
Or put a fish in my backpack or something, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that one was not really that he was a bad outfitter at all. I mean, Michelle got a bear. The other gentleman got a bear.
Just new. And you
yeah,
get
he
that.
was just new. I'd seen bears, but nothing that I really wanted to shoot. So it was, overall, it was an okay experience. But it was something that, if I would have known ahead of time, it would have been nice to be able to sit down or other guys that I know sit and talk to him to get him to relax a little bit so he didn't scare his other clients. But I mean, we've been on I was on an elk hunt once, and I always was a do-it-yourself guy because I'd guided elk hunters for years in my younger days. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to, I always did it on my own after that. And one year, my dad and a buddy wanted to go. We wanted to go to Colorado, so we hired a drop camp. Basically, they had camp, everything else, and this guy was supposed to show up to check on us every day, this and that. Well, that never happened either. We got there, and camp was a joke. We ended up having to run to town and buy a bunch of stuff to finish off camp and do some things, and nobody ever showed up. We had a guy, I think like day 5 or something, swing in and, I didn't even know there was anybody in camp this week. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? And
great communication.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
And we asked a lot of questions, but obviously not the right ones. And
that's where I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes I think you can ask all the questions. The key will be how they answer them? Are they caught off guard? And do you trust the answers?
Yeah.
and that's and that's it. I mean,
and what's hard too is like a lot of these are conversations that you're having over the phone, maybe even email or texting, but over the phone, where you're not seeing the look on their face, right, for any tells,
Right.
or signs that they're not telling the truth. I mean, we have seen, we do like the deer and turkey expos now, the open season expos up here in the upper Midwest. The deer classics, things like that. And there's a lot of outfitters at those shows, a lot of outfitters. And just a couple of years ago, we were at the Wisconsin show here, and our hunting buddy that Art's kind of talking about on this elk hunt, I think, was looking for a bear guide, a place to go, bear hunting. And may probably, wait until the last minute, kind of a thing. And got to have a certain zone. And found this guide and was talking to somebody here at the show, and it was a little sketchy. I think we weren't really liking what we were picking up talking to him.
Yeah, and he booked one with him anyway, and then never heard from the guy again.
Wow.
And so then he ended up not having a bear hunt. He had
and then you lose your points.
Yeah, and he lost his points. He lost his tag. He didn't even hunt because everybody else was booked, and he didn't want to spend the money. And yeah, it was just an absolute cluster.
But what were some things like thinking? And I can picture where that guide, like on the show floor, like where the booth was. What are some things that you didn't like? Like, what were you picking up on? Because you went and talked to him too, I think.
I went and talked to him, and it was just, the number of baits he was running, where he was running the baits, talking about how much time it took him, things like that. And, to somebody else who had never bear hunted, okay, well, that's great. But as I'm sitting there listening to this guy, I'm like, that's not possible. There's absolutely zero, that's not possible in that timeline for somebody who's done it, and I had done it for years. I'm like, that just, no. And so then you ask him his success rate, and he tells me something. I send somebody else down there. He tells him something completely different. Then he talks about, that he guides in 2 different zones, and he's this and that, and it just, there's just so much stuff.
Uncommon.
Yeah, but there was just so much stuff that was not adding up. And that's why I sent somebody else down there and said, hey, you know what, ask these questions. And I even told my buddy, I said, man, I wouldn't do it. And he did. And then he got burned. And so, that's the other thing is if you feel kind of, I don't have a good feeling about this, have a buddy or have somebody else call him. Ask him the same questions. See if you're getting the same answers. Yeah. Test that guy, and sometimes they don't like it, but hey, it's like I said, it's hard-earned money for 99.9% of the population who wants to go on these hunts, and you want a good experience. Again, we've had there's only been a few. I mean, that outfitter that was afraid of bears, the one hunt that I was on, we actually this one. We went to Missouri, Michelle and I did. And this outfitter, super nice guy, had a beautiful place to stay, everything else.
Yeah, he didn't have a nice camp there.
The only issue with this guy.
No, there was another. Do you remember the stand?
Yeah, I was going to get to that too.
Oh, but
there's a couple.
That's the hunting issue.
There's a few
the other
issues.
was not hunting related.
Yeah. So the first issue was he cared.
Well, there was 2.
He cared more about fun time with his girlfriend than he did about taking care of his hunters and maintaining things on the property and looking at things. He would stay up all night long and have extremely loud, annoying sex with his girlfriend that everybody and anybody could hear through this entire...
I mean, because we were in like a house, like a pole shed converted into a lodge.
Right.
With like the living room and kitchen spaces out front, and then like several bedrooms going down the hall towards the back, and then his bedroom in the way back. And so the walls are they're like hotel walls, right? Super.
And it
walls.
wasn't insulated, so it was
the internal walls definitely were.
Yeah, and it was just, I'm like, oh my God. And I got back and I was talking to one of my buddies. He's like, you're jealous, and I'm like, maybe a little bit, but that had nothing to do with it, man. I was there to hunt. I wasn't going to, listen to some porn show or whatever. I wanted to hunt. And then, so you're tired, you've been in a stand all day, and you come back and you don't sleep because that's all you have to listen to. You put earplugs in, and that still didn't even help. And
Right.
so, that was the problem at the lodge. The other problem was because he was, I think, so busy doing this, and running around with her during the days instead of taking care of what he had to. I mean, he sent us to a stand one morning, and we get to the stand, and there's a tree that fell over. It looked like it fell over weeks prior before we got there, and was laying on the stand, had the stand all busted.
Oh, jeepers.
And I called him, and he's like, well, any way you can still get in it? It's a good place.
No, I don't remember. I remember him
No.
coming out and getting us and not.
Yeah, he then came
He
back
came out
out
and got
because we're
us.
like, no, we
But
can't.
you don't. You're walking out in the dark, and so you don't know these things until you get there, and then it's getting light enough that you can make out what's going on. But yeah, we had a like a widowmaker, tree situation in the tree that our stand was in, and even then, like the tree steps were like you had to be like 6.5 feet tall. And I know I'm short. I get it. I'm like at the extreme other end, but they were not.
Most tree steps are put in, anywhere from 9 to 12 inches, right? So that's what normal people. Yours have to be about 2.5
No,
to 3 inches.
these tree steps were like
Oh, they were, yeah. And he
Four-
also had it.
far apart.
He had one tree that you go up one tree and you get about 8-9 feet off the ground, and then you would have to turn around and grab tree steps on the other tree and pull yourself across to the other tree, and then all the way up. And I'm thinking, man, I hope this guy's got good liability insurance.
Right? Because that's not
Because,
safe, huh?
yeah, this is just not safe. So there are other things, that's another question. Depending on what type of hunt you're doing, what kind of tree stands do you have? I'm either short or I'm a big dude or I'm this, how easy is it to get into? How physical is this hunt? And some people need to know that. It's not everybody is physically fit. Other people have issues. I used to, like I said, run all over the place and do whatever as an athlete. Well, now after breaking my back doing things, putting weight on because of that, and my back hurting, I have a lot of issues with certain tree stands and certain things to get into. So for me, it's, how do I get there? How physical is this? As far as walking, things like that, I still like to go out to the mountains and I still like to hike. The problem is, when I broke my back, I broke my, compressed the L4, L5, and it broke the L5 on both sides. And that now has, because of the issue and the way that it regrew, I've got arthritis in there and that's pinching, I just had MRIs to find out what's going on. It's pinching, some nerves and it's pushing down and starting to bulge the disc a little bit. Where we're going to go with that in the future, I don't know. But so for me, I start walking long distances and my foot goes numb. Well, in the mountains, that's not good because, you step on a rock that gives way or something. And I don't feel that. It could be, devastating. And so these are questions other than, what type of animal am I going to be shooting? What am I going to be, I want a 300-inch elk. Is that possible where I'm at? What kind of weapon do I need? What kind of clothing? Things like they're your normal questions. Yeah. But then you also have to get into how many people are going to be hunting. How physical is the hunt? Do we need certain things to skin that animal, field dress that animal? Is that included in the hunt? Is it not included in the hunt? I mean, there's so many things that people skip as far as questions when they're asking that. And a lot of outfitters, will just give you a sheet and say, hey, this is all on my website. Read this. If you have questions, let me know. Well,
Yeah.
even if you read that and you think you don't have questions, you better come up with questions and ask questions because there's always questions.
I I think a good outfitter should ask questions to you, like you were saying, do you have any limitations?
Right.
This is going to be a physical hunt, um, things like that. So you know what you're up against when you get there and that you have the right equipment with you. Like you said, Art, they can give you a sheet, tell you to bring, warm boots, blah, 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 blah. But um, they should be asking you a lot of questions as well to make sure you're ready for the hunt.
Oh,
And
100%. I mean,
yeah.
especially when it comes to your equipment, both of you should be talking about that. How proficient are you? Is it an archery hunt? Is it a gun hunt? Do you have, are you shooting the right caliber, the right bullet for that game? It's, I'm not going to go out and probably shoot. Some people do. But for myself, thankfully I got enough weapons and stuff that I'm not going to shoot the same thing on an antelope that I'm going to shoot on an elk. I'm not going to shoot, the same size bullet or grain bullet or hollow point or, nozzler tip or whatever, because when I'm shooting that, if I shoot that same thing that I'm shooting an elk and I shoot an antelope with that, well, number one, would it work? Probably, but that bullet is made to expand completely different on an animal that size. So now I shoot that and I just punch a little hole through it. And because it didn't have time to expand, because it's such, it's not a dense of animal, now all of a sudden I lose that animal. If I use the same bullet, it's not big enough to tear things up and I lose that. So, I mean, these are all questions that both of you should be, talking to each other, fixed blade versus mechanical, what size animal. There's so many things that people don't ask, they assume.
Mm-hmm.
And you should never assume anything when it comes to going on not only an outfitted hunt, but any hunt that you're going on. Public land, private land, it doesn't matter. You need to, just like you said, finding out how much land they have. Well, if you're not going with an outfitter, you better know, if you're doing a public land hunt, you better have some type of a good app. You better have your Hunt Stand, your Onyx, your Spartan Forge, or something, because it's, and know where it is, but those are still not the true lines. They're going to get you close, but you need to do your homework on that stuff. It's just like being an outfitted hunt.
I want to kind of say too, we got kind of talking about, abilities and, how physical or demanding a hunt might be. The hunter, you have that onus to know what you can and cannot do. Like Art was talking about the problems with his back in recent years. He's not going out and booking mountain elk hunts right now. That would just be irresponsible.
I wish I could.
Right, but you don't. I mean, so you have to like we're not out here booking sheep hunts right now and elk hunts because that's out of the question. But there are, so you have to start with what's realistic and reasonable for you at whatever given level of fitness and ability that you have at the given time, to pick something that's in your wheelhouse and in your realm of possibility. But then there is still room to ask questions to find out the details of that.
Right.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, you're spending your hard-earned money, so don't feel like you're asking questions that aren't appropriate or whatever. You should be able to ask this guy any question you want to about the hunt. And if he stutters on anything, chances are you're going to have some issues.
Right. And, like Michelle said with that, one of the last things that I guess I've got to say is, being here in the Midwest, a lot of us hunt whitetails. So we know whitetails. We know turkeys. We have places to hunt those. And, it's just like fishing. We all have our places. But outfitters, some of them get a bad rap. Again, there's a lot of great outfitters out there if you do your homework and figure it out. But when you go, like somebody from here that's going out west, you've never elk hunted, or you want to elk hunt, or you want to mule deer hunt, antelope hunt, you don't know that animal. You don't know its territory, its home, or anything else, unless you've done it year after year and you're good at it. So if it's your first time, there's nothing wrong with hiring a guide. There's nothing wrong with, you see this all the time on the internet, which, is starting to drive me crazy, but, you're on a guided hunt, blah, blah. Who cares if you're on a guided hunt? You know what? This might be, like Brad said, it's your hard-earned money. You might have saved up for this, and it might be a one-shot deal. And so, you know what? You do your homework, do your due diligence, figure it out, and you hire them to do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Just what we are hoping to make people aware of today is, please, again, do your homework so you don't get burned on that hunt. Because there are a lot of great outfitters, and I've hunted with a ton of great outfitters. I've also, like you've heard, there's a few, and I could tell stories for probably another 25 minutes on a few of the outfitters, and I'm just like, seriously? I mean, I've been to some, and you just turn around and basically walk away. But that's very few. That's the minority of outfitters that are out there. So, check with them, do your homework, and don't be ashamed ever to hire an outfitter or a guide to go and hunt with, ever, because it's as long as it's legal and ethical, you go out and have fun and enjoy it.
Yeah, let's maybe wrap up and summarize some of the key takeaways here. Brad, why don't you name one?
Definitely check for reviews on the internet for the person, or ask for references that you can call.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Get it in writing, right? Get a contract, I think, is a good one. So you've got some clear written expectations and maybe something to fall back on if you need it.
I say if you're going on a hunt where the main lodge is a shoust, take earplugs.
Earplugs are always good to travel with. Ask questions.
Lots.
Yes.
Right? Ask lots and lots of questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, check with your buddies, your hunting partners, who are you using when you go out on hunts, and that's a good place to start as well. I booked a really good mule deer hunt through a friend, just asked him, and that turned out really good. So
Yeah, those like word of mouth, like personal references.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, one thing too, with this is just because, if you're young enough or whatever and you want to book this, don't think that you have to book it next year. It can be booked 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, giving you enough time to save up that money and do what you need to do and do your homework. Don't think that it has to be done tomorrow. But if you're planning on it within the next 5 years, you really need to start doing your homework now, today, not 6 months before you go out. Start doing it now, because you still have time to change who you're going with or what you're doing and taking. So, start planning it now for the future.
All right. There you have it. Some, maybe the good, the bad, and the ugly about some outfitters and guides, but gave you some good tips to hopefully get on a good hunt with a guide and outfitter, and some things to know before you go and own the season.
Follow Own the Season Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for listening.
Check back weekly for new episodes.